Tom Homan certainly gets results. For more reaction now, let's bring in our Washington analyst, Annelise Nielsen, live from DC. So there's been a clear change of approach, hasn't there now, Annelise, following the release of that video in Minnesota, which clearly showed there was a difference between what happened on the ground and what the authorities were saying. Is this why Donald Trump is changing his approach?
Look, I think there were a few factors to it, but it certainly didn't help that the immediate statement that came from the Trump administration was so far off what not just one video, but several showed what happened on the ground there with that confrontation with Alex Pretti. Now, he is an individual that ICU nurse treats veterans. That's something Republicans take very seriously, but what they also take very seriously is the right to bear arms. And he was licensed to carry that firearm. He was carrying it in the appropriate way. So there was no reason, according to normal Republican ideology, that he should have any issue being there with that firearm on him as it was at that time. And if we think about, cast your mind back to 2020, when Kyle Rittenhouse was at the protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, with a semi-automatic, he wasn't legally allowed to own or carry or operate. And there was a huge amount of defense for him from the right in the US. And so this has been one of those cases where it's just so far off what traditional Republicans think. And this isn't a MAGA Republican, this isn't an old school Republican issue. This is really a big one for them, the Second Amendment right. So to have that footage show quite clearly that he wasn't brandishing the gun at all during this confrontation. He was on the ground with a number of officers over him. It has absolutely been a turning point. They've realised that they got the statement wrong, and so you can see them walking it back, and also Minnesota reaching out. And the governor, Tim Walz, also backing down a bit. I think everyone realises that something has to change here, something has to come to a head.
So, I mean, Tom Homan, he's clearly had results at the southern border. So what's he likely to do? What's he likely to change? And is he essentially overriding Kristi Noem?
Look, I think they're just saying that he's going to be the one getting in there and just doing the work. Because at the end of the day, most Americans do agree that there was out of control migration across the southern border, that there are people here not just illegally, which in and of itself is a crime, but the fact that they have come here with their own legal issues, that there are people that should be deported. What I imagine he will be doing is going to the Minnesota government, which, to be quite fair, has not been cooperating at all with the federal government, as is their right. States don't have to cooperate with federal governments on this, and that's a whole other issue we could talk about at length. But what we've seen is just this has become so ideological. I imagine he'll be going in with a list of names saying, come on, we want this guy, we want this guy, we want this guy. Is this really what you want to die on the Hill for? Because some of the people they've been detaining have horrendous criminal histories. Any reasonable person would say, hey, you're not here legally. You've got an awful track record and things like people smuggling, child abuse. Get them out of the country. So this is where I think just the rubber will hit the road and they'll say, look, we need to bring this to an end. If we can get these guys, we'll be out of your hair.
Yeah, and so what will that do to other states? You know, what will that do to the raids more broadly, but in other states as well? Would there be a change, or are they likely to continue those raids?
Oh, they'll keep going. And there's a very clear mandate from the White House. They've said they want 1 million people deported by the end of the year. And that is not out of context from what we've seen in previous administrations. Barack Obama deported 3 million people when he was in office, of course, over 2 terms. But the Biden administration was the outlier in how they managed the border. And we're seeing a drastic correction here, perhaps an overcorrection from critics would say. But what has to happen is there has to be some enforcement of immigration. And so we've already had ICE deployed. They've been deployed in DC, where I live. They've been deployed in major cities across the country.
LA.
What really changed here was that there was just, LA, Memphis was likely to be one of the big ones where there was confrontation. And that's where they were testing the states' rights too, because it borders 2 different states. But what we've seen is that this has just become such a political issue in Minnesota that there's been the grassroots issue that locals have taken with the raids and how they're being conducted. And it's the middle of winter. It's really hard in that kind of part of the world to be doing these kind of raids. A lot of the videos you see, these people are struggling just to stand up because the ground's so icy. So it's just a bit of chaos layered on madness.
Yeah, and we'll have more on that ice storm, that snowstorm coming up a little later on the show. Annelise, as always, it's good to see you. Good to talk to you. We'll chat to you again soon.
Thanks.